Catch the perpetrator quickly, will you? And the hospital better take its share of responsibility. Have you contacted the police yet?
No, we thought we'd wait for your husband to arrive and discuss. We'll consider how to proceed with Iris, and of course, we'll do everything possible.
What do you mean by everything possible? Be specific. We're saying we'll discuss it later. Your daughter's room has surveillance cameras, right?
Yes, patients who can't move on their own due to severe conditions are usually placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. They can't press the nurse call button or call for help if their condition suddenly worsens.
That's exactly why missing something despite the cameras makes them pointless.
We can't monitor the cameras 24/7. But we do record continuously. This is so we can check what happened in case of any problems.
So, there's a chance the perpetrator is on camera?
It's very likely.
Can I see the footage? How about watching it with the police?
My daughter had an accident 5 years ago and has been in a vegetative state ever since. Yet, she is pregnant. The shock of the incident has my husband, John, constantly lashing out at the doctors. So, I decided to talk to the doctor myself. With cameras in the hospital room, identifying the perpetrator should be straightforward. However, John interrupts our conversation. Checking the footage seems pointless to me.
Why?
The camera is blatantly installed in the room. Do you think the perpetrator wouldn't notice?
They must have done something this terrible because they could counter it. But we have to check.
Checking is futile. Besides, even if the perpetrator is caught on camera, do you really want to see what they did?
Well, I don't want to see it, but...
John's right. Checking the footage means seeing something we don't want to see. It seems best to leave this to the police. After finishing our conversation with the doctor, we returned to our daughter's hospital room. That's when John, with a smirk, made a face like a villain. Even during our talk with the doctor earlier, something felt off about my husband. My trust in John was crumbling. Later on, I overheard John talking with someone. The conversation was unforgivable. My name is Michelle. I'm a 42-year-old homemaker. My husband, John, is a year older than me and works at a company. We met in a university club, where he was my senior. John was a leader, relied upon by everyone, and admired by many women. I was one of those many women. There were many rivals, and plenty of cute girls, so I was content just admiring John from afar. However, due to some mistake, John started making moves on me. I once asked him, why me, out of all the people you could have chosen?
Michelle, you tend to get down easily, right? I just couldn't leave that alone.
Being prone to feeling down has always been a complex of mine. However, it seems this trait worked in my favor, unwittingly activating the classic dating technique of being the girl who needs protection. A year into our relationship, John became a working professional before me. We're only a year apart in age, so I joined the workforce soon after. However, the transition from student to professional felt significant, and I saw John, who had become an adult before me, as even more dependable. Indeed, John, having entered the workforce earlier, proved to be reliable. I'm just not cut out for this. I can't remember anything. I keep making mistakes, getting scolded by my superiors, and causing trouble. Going to work has become so hard. In my first year as a professional, I, being mentally fragile, naturally succumbed to depression. If the present me were beside her, I'd slap her back to reality, reminding her that feeling overwhelmed by work and not wanting to go to work is normal for anyone. However, speaking as someone who represents the mentally fragile, it's incredibly tough to pick yourself up from the depths of negativity during times like these. Some people even drop out because of this. But I had John.
Making mistakes is part of being a newbie. Maybe the real worry is when you stop being reprimanded? Being ignored completely is far scarier. If they're still pointing things out, it means they still have expectations of you. Plus, if you really feel out of place at your current job, switching careers might not be such a bad idea. It's not like we're in an era where sticking to one company is considered noble. You could probably still be treated as a relatively fresh graduate and find a new job easily.
John never just told me to try harder, and he always cautioned me not to overdo it. Having always believed that going all out was the only way, his advice felt like lifting a fog that had blinded me. Thanks to his guidance, I was able to relax and continue working. I couldn't think of anyone more reliable than him. 3 years have passed since I started working. We had a shotgun wedding. Our relationship was nearing 5 years, and with both of our careers stabilizing, the atmosphere was ripe for marriage, so finding out about the pregnancy didn't cause any panic. Instead, I saw it as a perfect opportunity to tie the knot. We hadn't met each other's parents yet, but both of us had informed them about whom we were dating during our student days and that we continued our relationship into our professional lives. They also knew we continued our relationship after becoming professionals. So, when we announced the pregnancy, there was no anger, just joy from our parents. It seemed my parents had wanted me to marry soon, and my in-laws were eager to see their grandchild. After informing our parents about the pregnancy, I, wanting to have the wedding before my belly got too big, hurriedly prepared for the ceremony. We managed to have the wedding smoothly, and later, our daughter Iris was born.
Iris, you're so cute today too.
Hey, she just fell asleep, don't wake her up. John is absolutely smitten with our daughter. Because of that, he rushes home at the speed of light after work, and on weekends, he doesn't stray more than 3 feet from her. I used to worry he was spoiling her too much because he adored her so. However, his being smitten wasn't all bad, he actively took care of our beloved daughter. Thanks to that, I was able to smoothly return to work after my maternity leave ended. After that, our daughter continued to grow up healthy, reaching the age of 12. She was supposed to start middle school soon. But now, she spends her days on a hospital bed. Our daughter was hit by a car while walking home from tutoring with 2 friends. They were crossing the street on a green light, but the driver, distracted by their smartphone, didn't notice the signal and crashed into them. I'm not fond of the phrase, but fortunately, her 2 friends only suffered fractures and their lives weren't in danger. However, my daughter ended up in a vegetative state. She can open her eyes but has no cognitive functions, and her body is completely immobile. I found myself blaming her friends for somehow escaping the fate that befell my daughter. I know it's irrational. But it was the only way I could keep my sanity.
Stay by Iris's side for me. I'll take care of everything else.
I'm sorry. Please do. On the verge of a mental breakdown, I could barely manage to be by my daughter's side. If I had to hear about the accident or the treatments now, I'm not sure I could keep myself together. Sensing my mental state, John took care of everything from dealing with the party responsible for the accident to the hospital paperwork and everything in between. Indeed, John is reliable. But I know this must be hard on him too. And yet, I feel guilty for burdening him with what needs to be done. I feel even more pathetic and a step closer to a mental breakdown. After a while, the compensation for our daughter's damages was paid out. Considering this money for our daughter's future living expenses, John separated it into a different account. The bank account he showed me for verification had an 8-digit figure. Under normal circumstances, it would be an incredible amount of money. Thanks to this money, we don't have to worry about our daughter's living expenses for the time being. So, while I'm grateful for the money, looking at those numbers fills me with emptiness. We'll have to pay for the hospital bills and everything from here on out. That's how it's gonna be. Once this money's gone, we can't get billed for more, right? What happens if it runs out? Can we afford Iris's hospital bills with our income? It feels like this number is the time limit we have to spend with Iris. Don't talk like that. Iris will recover before this money runs out.
What if she doesn't? Even if she doesn't recover, remember they told us not to give up and to keep talking to her for 10, 20 years if we have to? There have been recoveries after 30 years. Stop being so gloomy.
I'm sorry. You still seem down. I'll take care of the paperwork and all that from now on. Just stay by Iris's side like you have been. I'm sorry. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Unable to work in such a state, I quit my job to become a full-time homemaker, staying by my daughter's side. Though, calling myself a homemaker might not be entirely accurate since I barely do any housework, unemployed might be a better description. I devoted myself to my daughter, while John continued working. At first, John would stop by the hospital almost every day after work. But after a while, he visited less frequently, and I started to harbor resentment towards him. A year after our daughter's accident, my frustration reached its limit.
Why don't you come to the hospital more often? Don't you care about Iris? You always come home smelling of alcohol. What are you thinking?
I unleashed a year's worth of frustrations on my husband. But it seems I wasn't the only one harboring grievances.
You can help out around the house a bit too. Look at this living room. It's filthy and cluttered. And it's not just here. It's the whole house. My coming home late is also because you don't cook, so I end up eating out. And it's not just you who's having a tough time because of Iris. I should be allowed to drown my sorrows in a drink once in a while.
Maybe I was in the wrong here. Being yelled back by John made me feel like I had come back to my senses. Looking at the room, what didn't bother me before now seemed dirty. I'm sorry. It's not just me who's suffering. And I've been pushing everything onto you, saying whatever I please. No, I was wrong to yell too. Just like you said, I haven't been able to go to the hospital either. From now on, I'll try to visit Iris a bit more. Venting our frustrations to each other made us feel a bit clearer inside. And feeling clearer made us both reflective, and we resolved to work together for our daughter's sake. After that, John hadn't visited the hospital for a few months, but he started coming 2 or 3 times a week. I began taking care of the house and started working part-time. However, dealing with the hospital and understanding the system was complicated, and since I hadn't gotten the explanation from the start, there were things I didn't understand, so I decided to leave it to John as before. In exchange, I took care of everything else. This arrangement worked for a while. But then, problems started cropping up again. You didn't come to the hospital this week either. You didn't come last week. Is work keeping you busy? Yeah, it's been busy lately. That's why I'm coming home late. John stopped visiting the hospital again and came home late. And though he said he was late because of work, he came home smelling of alcohol. I could complain like before, but I think John has his own difficulties to deal with. Given the situation, it's understandable if his mental state fluctuates a bit. Being someone who's emotionally fragile and easily swayed by my moods, I kinda get where John is coming from. I figured he'd start coming to the hospital again after a bit. So, I decided to keep an eye on him. But leaving his mood swings unaddressed means I won't get the support I need. I started going to the hospital daily and even took up a part-time job. Gradually getting used to the routine would have been fine, but, true to my bad habits, I overdid it and ended up sick. You never change, do you? I'm sorry. No, it's my fault too. I said I'd go to the hospital and then didn't keep my promise. From now on, I'll make sure to go on my days off. In exchange, you need to take it easy.
But you're working harder than I am.
It doesn't matter who works more since everyone has their own limits. If you don't overdo it and rest properly, you wouldn't end up sick, right? Besides, showing up tired in front of Arya will just make her worry. You're right. We both ended up reflecting, and my husband started coming to the hospital again. 3 years after our daughter's accident. Just like he promised, my husband has been visiting the hospital on his days off. When he's at the hospital, I take the time to rest at home. It's not that we're taking our daughter's situation lightly or cutting corners. Her recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. Over these 3 years, I've learned that living efficiently is necessary to make it through the long haul. As for our daughter, she seems to be showing signs of improvement to me.
Iris, the weather's nice today, isn't it? Feels good. We couldn't go outside much last week because of the rain. Are you happy?
I push my daughter's wheelchair, walking through the hospital's courtyard. She has started to go for walks. A male nurse always accompanies us on these walks, though female nurses usually take care of her needs. The walks involve moving from the bed to the wheelchair, so a male nurse helps us out. To me, my daughter seemed to enjoy the sunlight and appeared happy. To others, her expression might not seem to have changed. But to me, it looks like she's smiling. I used to not see any change in her expression, so I've been thinking maybe my daughter is starting to recover on her own. But signs of recovery aren't just in her expressions. When I talk to her while holding her hand, it seems like she's responding with blinks. Some might think it's wishful thinking, but there are clear changes. She's started to be able to eat. When I say eat, I mean she can swallow food that's been pureed after swallowing therapy, but still, the main nutrition comes through a feeding tube. Even so, I can't help but feel hope and expectation. When we got back to the hospital room after a walk, a female nurse came by. It seems this month's hospital bill hasn't been paid yet. Must be John's oversight. I've left handling the hospital matters to him. So, I just need to remind John about the missed hospital bill payment over the phone. But he's been on a business trip since yesterday. He could make the transfer from where he is, but I feel bad bothering him with payments while he's away. I decided to go home and look for the credit card where my daughter's money is kept. Wasn't it here? I thought it was kept on the shelf where we keep our joint bank cards, but I can't find my card. It must be over there. There's a shelf where we keep documents and contracts we've used for hospital and accident dealings. The card must be there. Just as I suspected, it was there. However, the contents were not what I expected.
What? It's gone down this much?
Checking the amount in the online banking, it had already dropped to less than half. I understand that hospital expenses are high. But still, nearly $200,000 disappearing in 3 years seems way off. I started looking through the shelf again for documents that could give me a clue about the hospital expenses. Then, out from the shelf came a bunch of sleazy club membership cards, business cards, coupons, and so on. It looks like my husband has been visiting sex shop frequently. Searching the names on the membership cards and business cards, some were for nightclubs. And judging by how the money was spent, he was probably splurging on designer brands, too. When he smelled of alcohol, it was nightclubs. When he came home late without smelling of alcohol, it was other unsavory places. I found myself imagining things I really shouldn't have, and it made me feel sick. If it were just a matter of going to sex shops, some might settle it with a stern warning and a promise never to go again. But this involves an amount of money that's not so easily dismissed. Above all, I can't forgive him for dipping into our daughter's money. I decided to confront John when he returned from his business trip.
What's this about? Well, right after Iris had her accident, you were exploding with negativity, remember? At that time, I was so frustrated and stressed out because of you. I needed some stress relief. So, you've been doing this since that time? I might have been down, but I haven't been negative, you know? Well, about a year later, we had a fight, remember? That's when I stopped spending the money. But once you've indulged in luxury, it's hard to go back. You just can't help but want more.
I was ready to throw divorce at John for using our daughter's money. However, the reason my husband spent the money was because I had a mental breakdown and caused him stress. Knowing that I was part of the cause, I couldn't bring myself to be fully angry with him.
I see. All right, there won't be a next time then. You're forgiving me? Do you plan to tell Iris we're divorced when she recovers? No, I suppose you're right. But, as I said before, there really won't be a next time. Next time, I won't hesitate to divorce. And from now on, I'm keeping the card. Just tell me the payee and the amount when there's a payment to be made. I'll handle it.
It's moments like these that I hate how weak I can be. It seemed like John knew I would end up like this, understanding my personality all too well. But even knowing this, I can't fight my nature, and I end up offering a compromise, convincing myself that this is okay for now. 5 years after our daughter's accident. Since the incident with John misusing money, he has been more subdued. I'm in charge of the card, and his allowance has been significantly reduced, so there's no more sneaking off to sex shops. He occasionally comes home late, but without money on hand, he's probably just out drinking within his allowance. I continue to work part-time and visit our daughter. We can't go for a walk today because it's raining. I talk to her while wiping her body, as usual. When I went to wipe her stomach, as part of the routine, I noticed her belly was swollen. Iris is able to eat, though her meals are in paste form. She couldn't have eaten enough to cause her belly to swell like that. Worried that her unnaturally swollen belly might be due to some illness, I called for a nurse. After the doctor examined her, a shocking discovery was made. Iris was pregnant. Of course, being in a vegetative state, Iris couldn't have consented to any sexual activity. I immediately phoned John. When John learned about Iris's pregnancy over the phone, he came at the speed of light and started yelling at the doctor as soon as he saw him.
What the hell is going on with the security in this hospital?
The doctor shrank back, unable to reply. John, towering over the diminished doctor, relentlessly continued.
You've contacted the police, right? Catch the culprit fast. And the hospital is going to take full responsibility for this.
The doctor could only nod in response to John's intimidating presence. John's anger was justified, and I was furious too. But just yelling wouldn't solve anything. I calmed John down and then turned to the doctor to inquire further.
Have you contacted the police yet?
No, we thought we'd wait for your husband to arrive and discuss. We'll consider how to proceed with Iris, and of course, we'll do everything possible.
What do you mean by everything possible? Be specific.
That's what we're discussing now. I stopped John from snapping further and continued the conversation.
Iris's room is equipped with surveillance cameras, right?
Yes, as we mentioned at the time of admission, those cameras are there for security purposes as well as to monitor patients. Patients who can't move due to severe conditions are usually placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. They can't press the nurse call button or call for help if their condition worsens.
That's exactly why missing something despite the cameras makes them pointless.
I got tired of constantly having to intervene, so I gave John a look to silence him. Unfortunately, we can't monitor the cameras 24/7. But we do record continuously. This is to check what happened in case of any issues.
So, if we check the cameras, there's a possibility we'll see the culprit?
It's very likely.
Can I watch the footage too? How about watching it with the police?
Feeling somewhat relieved that we might catch the perpetrator soon, I nodded. But then John had to pour cold water on it.
I think checking the footage is a waste of time. Why? The camera is blatantly installed in the room, you know? The perpetrator couldn't have missed it. Maybe they did something this terrible because they knew how to get around it? But we have to check.
Even if we check, it's all in vain.
Plus, even if the perpetrator is caught on tape, do you really want to see what they did to Iris? I don't want to see it, but then we should leave it to the police and focus on discussing what's next with the hospital. As usual, you stay by Iris's side, and I'll handle the discussions with the hospital.
Let's wait until the hospital offers the best they can do.
The security was obviously lax, so we should expect them to take appropriate action.
If their response is dismissive, we'll push back. I was pulled by John, back to Iris's hospital room. Once we were back, John started smirking. He had been snapping at the doctors and seemed to pressure the hospital for the best possible deal. Hoping not to hear the answer I feared, I nervously asked John.
Are you planning to get money from the hospital?
Eh?
Of course. You're saying you don't want it? It's not that. I believe we should receive a fair amount for what's necessary. But watching you, it seems like you're aiming for more. What's wrong with that? It's only natural to get as much as we can. This is like Iris earning money with her own body. But she can't speak for herself. So, it's our duty as her parents to squeeze as much out of the hospital as possible, right?
It seems John has been corrupted by his nightlife, not just in his habits but mentally as well. It's not that I have a prejudice against women working in the nightlife industry. Sure, some take pride in their work. However, Iris didn't choose to get pregnant. John said it was like her earning money with her body. My trust in him crumbled with a loud crash. Money and desire. Can they really corrupt someone to this extent?
I snuck out of work, so I'm gonna make a quick call to the office.
As John left the room, his back looked to me like the villain of a drama.
It's going to be okay. I'll take care of everything.
I held Iris's hand, offering words without any basis. I know better than anyone that, not being a doctor, police officer, or lawyer, there's nothing I can do. Sighing, I looked out the window down at the courtyard. That's when John came into view. He was heading towards the edge of the courtyard. It looked like he was going somewhere out of sight. But if it was just a call, there was no need to go that far. He wasn't on the phone or anything. Driven by unstoppable mistrust, I hurried toward John. As I stealthily approached John, I saw a male nurse. He was the nurse always helping with our daughter's walks. It seems male nurse had arrived while I was coming down from the room. I eavesdropped on their conversation. And the content was shocking. Learning the truth, I was consumed by anger alone. A few days after our daughter's pregnancy came to light. She had an abortion. It was risky, but the surgery was a success. In my heart, I celebrated, thinking our daughter was indeed recovering and getting her strength back. Regarding the crucial camera in the room, just as John said, no suspicious person was caught on it. In fact, there seemed to be no interruptions or evidence of tampering or editing, as if nothing was amiss. It was as though our daughter had been impregnated by a ghost. However, DNA testing of the fetus revealed the perpetrator was not a ghost but the male nurse who had been helping with her walks.
The nurse was the perpetrator, huh? What a foolish act. Well, thanks to him, we'll be getting money from the hospital. Gotta be grateful for that.
With those contemptible words, John acted as if the case was already resolved with the nurse's arrest. But the real resolution of the case was yet to come. While John and I were at home, the doorbell rang.
Delivery? I think it's for you. Can you get it? Eh? Oh.
After giving me a puzzled look, John headed to the door. I followed him.
Eh? What's this about?
When John opened the door, there stood a police officer.
Did you call them?
John turned around quickly, showing me a surprised expression.
I didn't call them, but I was informed they'd be coming soon. Is your husband home? They asked. What do you mean? I overheard you talking with a nurse at the edge of the courtyard. At the edge of the courtyard means? Yes. You were accepting money from the nurse to allow terrible things to happen to our daughter. Selling our daughter's body, what were you thinking?
The day our daughter's pregnancy was discovered. I overheard the conversation between my husband and the nurse.
What should we do? I never expected a pregnancy.
It's true.
What have you done? Now, the perfect plan to take Iris for a walk, bringing her to a place without surveillance cameras, and pretending I took her and 2 others for a walk is ruined. Am I gonna get caught?
Probably.
You're the one who said DNA testing could be done even from a fetus. You'll be arrested, and I'll lose my allowance from you. My wife controls our bank account, and I only get a little allowance, so your money was my lifeline. Now I can't even go to sex shops. This is the worst. Well, thanks to you, it looks like I'll be able to extort some money from the hospital. But don't you dare break our deal. So, we're telling the cops that I did it all by myself, right?
Yes, you could do it with a 17-year-old virgin, and I let you fuck her for a cheap price, so you deserve to at least to take the blame, right?
In return, make sure you keep your promise too.
I get it. If I get caught but then released, I'll let you do it again. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the discount for taking the fall. Feeling disgusted, I recorded their conversation on my smartphone. I submitted the recording to the police. With the DNA results and the recording, the police took action. The nurse who was caught tried to claim he did it alone, as promised to John. But when confronted with the audio evidence I submitted, he confessed everything. The nurse's confession about John's involvement meant the police needed to speak with John too, so they came to pick him up.
There's no excuse that will work now. Damn it! What's the harm in letting a man have his way with her? It's not like she can feel anything.
John was taken away by the police without resistance. I didn't miss the muttered words he said at that moment. Though I had already intended to divorce him, his words only strengthened my resolve. Later, because our daughter was still 17 and thus under 18, John and the nurse were charged with violations of child welfare and anti-prostitution laws. Though it was their first offense, the nature of their crime led to a 7-year prison sentence for both. Of course, John and I divorced. We decided to split our savings, but I refused to give him any of our daughter's money since she would need it for her ongoing hospital care. Losing societal trust with a prison sentence means he'll have a hard time after release. I considered giving him a bit more money, but recalling his words as he was taken away by the police, I lost all inclination to do so. Now, I just want him to face the consequences of his actions to the fullest. I moved back home and transferred our daughter to a hospital near my parents. Since my parents have promised to support our daughter, I've decided to look for a new job. It's going to be hard with the gap in my resume, but I'm determined to work hard to support our daughter from now on.